Yeah, I'm curious about this, the no self aspect. I think you mentioned something in the last talk, in like talk five, then, where you mentioned that you can essentially glimpse this no self experience during meditations. Um, and I guess from my perspective, I have a strong sense of being the meditator in my head, even during the meditations. I can maybe see the impermanence of thoughts coming and going, um, not feeling that um, I'm controlling them as much as they are just popping up there. But I still have a strong sense of being this person looking out, even with my eyes closed, in the darkness of my own mind, where these images or thoughts appear. Um, but there's still a strong sense of being the meditator looking out. And I guess for me, that feels like self.
I think I hear what you're saying, that you're identifying more with the a witness of what's arising as opposed to what is arising. So you're
Yes.
yeah. So the observer, you see yourself as the meditator or the witness, and stepping back and observing what's what's happening. So that's so we identify with the egoic self, and we identify with all those five aggregates that we talked about. When that starts to fall away, uh, we very often then identify with the witness that saw all this not to be self. Oh, okay. Um, and really take this the self as witness, as the self identification. It's a higher order of reality, you could say. That makes sense. A higher order of self identification. That makes sense. Um, but it's still a duality. So it's not the end of the story. Um, so practicing when one is identified, and really, so the egoic self has really fallen away. So there might be also a transition point where there's the egoic self still, you know, sticks its head out every once in a while. Uh, and so you really might not be able to say that the self has completely fallen away. It's just, it's been transcended, more or less, um, but not permanently. So falling away of this egoic self is a permanent cessation of the egoic self. There's no longer any pull by the egoic mind. And the transcendence of the egoic self is a temporary transcending of the egoic self. So you could be, we can be anywhere in that kind of transition point. At some along that path, often there's an identification with the witness, and particularly when the egoic self completely falls away, there is very often the self then kind of goes into an identification with the witness, and you just kind of sit back and just witness, and it's kind of an amazing, very joyful identification, because the identification with the egoic self was so painful. It's just struggle, right? It's so energy consuming. Identification with the witness is quite joyous and quite invigorating, because there's all this energy. You're just watching. You could sit on a log in amazement at what's just there. So the mystery becomes the mystery of anything. It just becomes so um, interesting, and you could yeah, it's very joyous and um, pleasant, happy period when the egoic mind completely falls away and there's identification with the witness. But as I said, that's not the end, because that's still a duality. There's still a witness and what's being witnessed. So the practice is to go beyond even the witness, to see that even the witness is illusory or a fiction. I'm not going to go into. So we'll talk about that, because I don't often get that question. Usually, the question I get is, how do I see the truth of no self? How do I transcend the egoic self? How to transcend the witnessing self is another is another thing. There's deeper practices. I would just say that just sitting can be very helpful in this process, taking kind of the Zen approach of non-interference. So not actually doing anything that can be witnessed, right? You just sit in stillness, and because when the egoic mind has fallen away, there's a lot of stillness as well. There's all that chatter is gone. So just sitting can be very helpful in this phase, and just seeing the emptiness of the witness, and even seeing the emptiness of emptiness. Nothing has a self nature. Emptiness doesn't have a self nature. Witness doesn't have a self nature. Perception doesn't have a self nature. And so seeing that, so that can be, that would be a practice that I would, and working with you on this, I would encourage you to explore.